I'm Sam. Got two kids who are 8 and 5 now. Both of them were premature. Son was just shy of 2 months premature. Daughter was 3 months early, so pretty premature. So we spent a total of 134 days in neonatal intensive care, and went through quite a journey, I think it's fair to say. Post coming out of there, there's a huge journey to deal with about the emotions and the feelings, and very much from a dad's view, how you cope with that and how you think about the future. You know, those seminal moments in your life, you remember the minute details. So I remember it was a Sunday, it was the Manchester Derby was on TV. I had a really nice bottle of Rioja that I was given as a present. I was going to have a glass of that, watch the game, settle back. My wife was like, oh, I feel a bit funny. Called the hospital, they said, okay, come to the hospital. And this is at 28 weeks of pregnancy, and pregnancy should be 40 weeks.
Had the pregnancy been okay up to that?
Like the perfect pregnancy. She was glowy, growth was perfect. So we went to the hospital, they did a check, and they said, oh, your waters are broken. And it's like, we're like, okay, we hadn't even gone to NCT class at 28 weeks, right? So this is our first kid, and you're like, what does that mean? That doesn't sound good, but what does it mean? Well, it means your labour started, but it could be weeks before the baby comes, so don't worry about it. What we're going to do is we're going to do some tests, check how things are. So they stuck a uterine monitor on her to check the uterus contractions. They're like, there's no contractions, don't you worry, it's okay. I could see my wife, which in hindsight I know were contractions, but at the time you're like, you okay? You got cramps. You're kind of going like this. Just told the nurse, like, it's fine, it's not cramps. My wife asked him, can she go to the toilet? So she went to the toilet, and the next thing I hear is a scream. The nurse rush in, and my wife is there holding a baby in the toilet at 28 weeks. And it's a bit like, is going on here? And I remember, and again, going back to I don't know if anyone has this, like certain sounds or smells, those olfactory moments that trigger things. So crash button pressed, crash team came running in, incubator, consultants there. When they turn on the incubator for premature babies, well, at least that particular model, the warm-up sound is exactly the same as the opening bars to Mamma Mia from ABBA. So it goes, so now, if I hear that song, I'm just like, no, can't do that. Our baby was then whisked away to the Trevor Mann baby unit in Brighton. At that early stage of development, they're almost translucent, their bodies. They don't have facial features, they're more primate, the features, so there's no defined nose, eyes. It's the weirdest experience to see them that fragile. And I've got pictures where her entire arm would be across the palm of my hand, and it's just really strange. So yeah, we ended up spending 98 days with our daughter in the Trevor Mann unit. Had a rocky journey in there. There was one of the biggest complications we had was she had severe bleeding on the brain, which meant a lot of long-term life complications. I remember the consultant sitting down and delivering the news to us, I think on day 7, where they'd done a second brain scan, and he was in tears delivering to us. And I remember thinking, that's probably not good if you're crying, but also I really appreciate that humanity, because, consultants and doctors are generally, they have their front, they have their way of trying to protect themselves, but he was broken down, and it was like, yeah, this is bad, isn't it? This is big.
I imagine your heart was in your mouth. But you have to be there to support your partner as well. You've just gone through major medical complications.
Yeah.
How did you balance, without being crass, your emotional needs with being there for your partner?
That's a really good question. In terms of being there for your partner, all you can do is try and do the best you can for the baby at that point. Like, you try and support your partner, but you're both like, you're in shock. Right? There's a reason why 74% of people who go through NICU end up with PTSD, because it's frontline battlefield, life or death. You're just living in that minute, and you don't have a moment to step back and deal with it. So yeah, it's an intense place to be.
What's thinking for the
neonatal intensive care unit? It's a place which is hopefully you never have to visit. If you do, you'll meet some of the most amazing human beings you'll ever meet there. The staff that work there are absolute angels. They spend 24 hours a day caring for your child and keeping them alive. It's just like my heart bleeds when I meet them again. They're like, guys, you kept my kid, you saved my kid, you literally kept my kid alive. It's incredible. You've got 3 rooms, 3 levels of NICU, right? If your kid's born early, you go straight into what's called nursery 1, which is like intense NICU. It's where it just happened, they need to assess how critical the situation is. The ratio there, it's you have a dedicated nurse for your baby, and there's a doctor per 2, at least when I was there, the doctor per 2 babies looking after them. And if you're in nursery 1, shit's quite serious. It's like, okay, this is life or death. Nursery 2 is like, okay, we're not critical, but we're dealing with a lot of shit here. And then nursery 3, foot comes off the gas, and you're getting a bit ready to kind of come home. So if you're in nursery 1, you don't even think about you or your partner or anything else. You think about your kid. You think about, okay, I'm going to have to make decisions here, which could be life or death. You've got medical staff saying, okay, your kid's SATs levels are sitting at 65, so we need to do potentially an intubation to be ventilated. And you're like, okay, can you break it down? So you have to try and be as cognizant as you can to think about these medical conditions that are going on. So your own needs, your health is secondary. And the other side,
you go to autopilot if there is such a
totally, yeah. You're in survival mode.
You can't be eating, you can't be sleeping during it.
You should be, but
yeah, obviously,
but you don't. And I remember there were nurses that said to us, guys, go home, get some food, get some rest, because you look terrible.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm going to sit here by my baby's side. I'm going to be there 24/7. They're like, please don't do that.
Is there so much, I suppose, the guilt of the idea of leaving?
Yeah.
To give yourself, in retrospect, you can go, yeah, it made sense to go home and get some rest, get some food. But at that time, I suppose your laser focus was on that.
Yeah.
But you must have been so run down and so, I can't.
So like when our daughter was there in 2015, like if any of you commute to London, you'd remember that was the year of the Southern Rail train strikes, and it was a nightmare to go to work. So it used to take me, I think it was 2.5 hours door to door each way to work. So I'd go to work in the morning, get back from work at like 7 p.m, go straight to the neonatal unit, stay there till about 1 in the morning, come home, and then get up at 5, and did that for months on end. And it is brutal. Like some of the stuff I do now with the EBA and the Bliss charity, I actually go back up to the unit and go into the units and wards and spend time talking to the families there, and particularly for me, for the dads there, because one of the key things I saw was, rightly so, everything is geared up to looking after this tiny baby, and also taking care of mum, who's just had, be it a C-section, gone through a dramatic birth. Everything is geared towards them. And there's all these dads there, which I just dub ghost dads, because they're just walking around. They've got nowhere to go that isn't a breast pumping room. They've got no one to sit down and talk to, because everything is just madness and frontline emergency care. And they just look absolutely lost and broken. And I've had some conversations in there with dads, which we've both just been in tears with each other, just talking to each other. And it's been the most honest, lovely, but brutal conversations I've had in my life.
You're there for the child, and you're there for your partner, obviously. But there is, I remember hearing it from one other dad a little while ago, and he said, I've been there sort of 6 months on a camp bed, and not one person's actually asked how I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, and that really broke my heart.
Yeah. It's really sad to see that, and the staff of the unit know there needs to be more done on that, and it's great that the EBA is pushing that, and there are more initiatives to kind of help dads out in the unit. And for me, that's like, that's my big push up there. And I've spoken to dads there. It's like, mate, how are you doing? They're like, I'm broken. I don't know what to do. And it's like, okay, let's talk it through. Let's tell me how you're feeling. Tell me like the biggest worries. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open, and half an hour later, the conversation is, mate, I feel 1,000 times better than I felt 30 minutes ago.
While all this is going on, life still goes on. You still have to go to work.
Right.
You have to pay the mortgage.
Yes.
Because you've got other siblings.
There's dogs, there's kids. Yeah.
How the hell do you manage, or you don't manage, because it sounds your old routine, you were surviving on 3 or 4 hours sleep. You're on a one-way ticket to some terror. bad health there.
Totally are, right? And you don't have a lot of choice whilst you're in NICU.
Yeah.
In terms of managing, everyone's situation is different in that, right? There's some people who've got amazing family support networks to help them, or friend support networks. Other people have nothing. So you kind of you scrabble through and then deal with the aftermath later. And for me, that came about I remember this was after, because our son was premature as well, and that was 4 years later. I remember because I used to play a lot of hockey and football, and I'm a pretty pacifist kind of guy. And then after playing hockey since our daughter was born, I was getting red carded for violent conduct every game. And it made me realise, hold on, there might be some unresolved shit here that I haven't quite dealt with.
Yeah.
I then went to speak to a therapist, and that really helped. And that moment where the foot comes off the gas and you breathe, that's when it hit me. I remember being in the shower and I just collapsed sobbing. I was like, I don't know what to do. And it was my wife who really helped me through it. She was like, hey, you need help more than I can give you. So she found me someone to speak to who knew about premature birth and kids with disabilities, and that really helped. But I think, the takeaway for me is that it's like you can put on that as strong a face as you need to do at the time, but it's gonna get to you at some point. It's gonna hit you. You've got to talk about it. There's not a man alive who's strong enough to keep all that inside and not deal with it. So I think forums like this where people can talk about stuff, oh my God, so important. Without an outlet, all of that emotion, all of that feeling builds up and up and up.
So tell me, you mentioned that the odds are stacked against you, and it happened again. Which is incredibly unlucky. Was it? It was sort of two-part question.
Yeah.
Were you better prepared if you could be? Which is a really weird way to look at it. But also, are there long-term side effects with the children's health because of what they went through?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my daughter was born already, has a lot of complicated diagnoses. So she's cerebral palsy, wheelchair user, sensory processing disorder, suspected autism, being reassessed for the second time, precocious puberty, which means because of a brain injury, her body's going to puberty from the age of 5, so we have to kind of offset that. We were better prepared just from having been through that NICU journey, and the pregnancy the second time was a lot more complicated than the first one. There was a lot more scares and worries throughout it. So we had our emergency neonatal bag packed by the front door, and we knew. So for the first one, from when we found out my wife's waters broke to the baby being delivered, was 98 minutes. And then with our second one, I remember we were at home, my wife was putting some washing in the machine, literally proper balloon waters breaking. We were like, okay, we've got minutes to get to the hospital. Got to the hospital, turned out that it was a cord prolapse. So our son was upside down. He was coming out feet first, pushing the umbilical cord through, which meant he would have pulled the placenta out and he would have died from blood loss and lack of oxygen. So they had to do an emergency C-section then and there on the spot. So basically our kids had a competition to see who could have the most dramatic entry to the world ever. And I don't know who won because they were both insane. So we were better prepared just from having been through that initial experience. And it did make it easier because our daughter, the case with our daughter was very intense, right? There was I would say 5-6 times a day where we thought she would die, non-resuscitate order in place. It was brutal. With our son, he was basically fine, right? He came out dramatically, didn't need anywhere near the level of care our daughters did. We got to go back to NICU, see all the nurses again, like, hey guys, back again, love you.
Is there something else? Somebody else has been through the sort of early birth experience, told me that she found it really difficult to relate to other mums.
Oh my God.
So they were like, there was a group of mums afterwards going, oh, I can't wait to get rid of the kids because I want to go for a night out. And she's like, I can't do that. The idea of leaving them and having some kind of normality is crazy. So is there a guilt? And
that guilt is still pervasive now. I mean, especially with premature kids, their susceptibility to illness is off the charts high. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm sure, you said you spent time in NICU, you'd know exactly what I mean. Yeah. Like, we came out in winter and Like, we were at the point of being on first name terms with the ambulance drivers, the amount of times you had to be ambulance into hospital. There was a time our daughter got super sick, so she was blue lit to the Evelina Hospital in London. She was on life support for 2 weeks. Like, our life was medical for like the first 6 years of life. And you are hyper vigilant, especially in winter, because, like, you know, kids get cold, their nose get runny, sneezy, coughy. But for a premature kid, you pick up a cold, it can literally kill you. Like, it nearly did our daughter. She had 3 lung collapses, sepsis, pneumothorax, so they had to basically stick a tube in her body to release the pressure from her lung collapses. On life support, literally from the common cold, from the RSV virus. So that's the level you're dealing with. You're like, okay, don't, you know, call me crazy, but I don't want you touching my kid in winter. I don't want you going near my kid.
So that's the idea of play dates or any of that normal...
Out the window, completely out the window.
You are socially isolated to the extreme.
Exactly.
I suppose any people that can understand that are other families that have been in that situation. Otherwise, you're a bit hyper-vigilant. You're a bit touchy.
Yeah, exactly. We even had a sign on a pram that said, please do not touch premature baby, because, you know, there's well-meaning old ladies who are like, oh, little baby, jubba. And it's like, and hospital, please don't do that. So, yeah, we literally had a sign saying, please don't touch, because it gets tiring having to repeat it day in, day out.
Obviously, you're 9 years down the line now.
Yep.
Life is normal.
Normal. That's a good word.
What your normal is. Have you got a sense of? Tell us about what the sense of reality actually looks like then, because you go normal, but so what's your normal?
Yeah, I mean, normal is a scale, right? Everyone's normal is relative, be it from a relationship or a kid's or a health viewpoint. So, as parent carers to a disabled young lady and a premature kid.
Has your son got a lot of side effects as well?
No, I suspect ADHD, but not confirmed. But
he's in mainstream school and
stuff. Well, our daughter's in mainstream school as well. Okay. Because I mean, this in itself is amazing, right? So I remember the consultant who gave us the delivery of the brain scans, not the one who was in tears because he was like a genuinely emotionally sensitive person. This other consultant who I would question his bedside manner. He came to us and said, these are the worst brain scans you've ever seen. Your daughter doesn't have any brain left. And it's like, cool, man, that's a nice delivery. Thanks for sharing that in that really soft touch way. And then this goes to show how little we know about the human brain. So my daughter's 8. She speaks 2 languages. She is top of the class in maths, top of the class in reading. It's just absolutely blows my mind. And we have to, as her parents, we have to take credit for getting her to that point, right? Because we've worked hard from day one. Yeah. Like, I was called the book dad in NICU because I bought every single Roald Dahl book and sat there and read to her like for hours and hours. Because as a dad, when they're in incubator, there's not a lot you can do, right? They're so small, you can't touch them for weeks. Even as a dad of a healthy term kid, it's shocking. You're like, do I hold it? Yeah. But when your kid is in a box that you can't touch and is stuck from wires and you're literally watching her oxygen levels drop and be like, is she gonna die now? So I just read and read. And there's no evidence to suggest that's why she's such a good reader, but I've heard anecdotally from other NICU parents that they've done the same and that's happened as well.
That is amazing, and considering where you've come from and what you've been through, to be, you tell this quite light-heartedly.
Yeah.
Like, which is outstanding, first of all, because this is a heavy subject.
It is. You've got to approach it. Maybe it's that gallows humour that a lot of medical professionals have.
Do you think a lot of families that have been through it have that as well? Is there quite a nice community? They have a gang, or, you know.
What, a secret handshake?
Is it like Biggie and Tupac? You know?
there is a kind of a close network of post-NICU families. Yeah. But also for families of kids with disabilities, there's massively close networks in Brighton. Yeah. You get together and you laugh at all those people with their boring, neurotypical and physically able kids.
I think for probably most of us here, that was the first time that we've ever heard something so that story. So the brutal reality of it. Yeah, we're aware of kids, babies being premature, but to visualise that was
134 days in total, I think.
The fact that you said 134 days as well.
Oh, you remember every second of it. Every second of it. I remember every smell, every incident of it. That shit is there for life.
Yeah.
That is a fundamental part of moi now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you very much to the Early Birth Association for facilitating stuff like this.
It's great that the EBA funds this. I think that's amazing, and I know that they said that they're doing for like either dads who are on the unit or dads who are recently on the unit, free sessions to come and join here.
Big round of applause, please.